Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing amazing.
Listen, we would like to welcome you all to Moments with the Marcelins.
Welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm excited for today's conversation, and I hope that your life is enriched today.
Absolutely. So let's let our listeners know what are we going to be talking about.
We're actually going to be sharing our story, which is the unedited version of our life together and journey together.
Y'all about to get the tea.
The real tea. So go and get your cup of tea. We'll be able to pour it out. Y'all sip that tea. No, but I'm honestly excited. I'm honestly a little bit nervous too, because it is our story, and I don't think we ever shared it to this extent.
Yeah, and one of the things, like, before we even jump in, one of the things that is a bit intimidating on sharing your story is that people's perspectives can kind of change of you.
Right.
And that, human nature, because we always all the time are like, well, I don't care what anyone, like, let's be real. We all, to an extent, care what others think about us.
Of course.
And so.
And I think it's also your testimony.
Right.
But through it all, I think we're also at a point where it's like, this is what God did in our lives.
Yeah.
And we hope that you leave with hope after listening to this podcast or to this episode,
Absolutely.
So if God did it with us, he can do it with you.
He can do it with you.
All right, so let's get into it.
All right, let's get into it.
So how did we meet, June? Let's get your point of view first.
All right. My point of view is the facts, y'all.
Not true. There is his story, her side, his side, and the truth. All right.
So we met in 2013 through my best friend, one of my best friends. And I remember him introducing me to you. And I was like, okay, she kind of fly, And so, we were just friends at that time.
Right.
We were trying to get to know one another.
We met at church.
So just so y'all know, sometimes that one might be in church. Mm-hmm. Sometimes not, but it's okay. And so we met at church, and we began to start hanging out together, getting to know one another, hanging out in group settings.
Right.
I believe your birthday kind of came up, and we went like paintballing. And
that was so fun.
And we just had a great time. And I began to start having an interest in you.
Right.
And I let you know.
Yeah.
And let's hear your side.
Let's talk about that. Okay, so yes, we met at church. Those are facts. Just kidding. So we met at church, and we really just kind of became friends from there. Like, we would hang out a lot of the times in groups too. We would go out to groups together. Do you remember the time that we went to Cheesecake Factory with a whole bunch of people?
Oh my God. Yo.
Y'all need to hear this. So we went to Cheesecake Factory, and it was a whole bunch of young adults, and he sat next to me. Cause again, we were friends, but I can tell he was kind of feeling me, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Girl.
And so everyone was dressed up. That was the thing.
Yes.
So we all went dressed up.
I remember what you had on.
I was wearing a green dress.
A nice green dress.
Yep.
Yes.
And you were wearing your button up and I think blue slacks. And so you sat next to me, and he started making fun of a friend that was super clumsy.
That is correct.
And if you know June, he talks with his hands, so they're constantly moving. So he's telling the story, making fun of his friend, and this beautiful man had ordered a strawberry lemonade from Cheesecake Factory, and obviously they're amazing.
Best strawberry lemonades, by the way.
And he knocks it over, and it spills all over my dress. It gets into my shoes, and his strawberry lemonade is super sticky, sugary, bro. My flats were ruined. My dress was all soaking wet and stained because of the sugar. It was so bad. I tried to play it off like it was whatever, but I was like, this dude is literally trying too hard. Look at him making fun of his friends, and then he ends up being the one.
Wow, that was your perspective.
Well,
he's trying too hard. This is the first I'm hearing of that. Listeners, I'm hearing this at the same time you are.
No.
Well, maybe a week or maybe a day or two, because I got to edit, but it's okay.
No, it's not that you're trying too hard.
But
it was just kind of you were just so extra. But at the same time, at that moment, I didn't know you that.
Right. You didn't know that this is me.
So now I know that that's you. Yeah. I'm letting you know 2013 version of Steph. Come on. Give me some grace. So,
I was so embarrassed.
That was hilarious. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was a group of 20 of us. It was huge.
Yeah, that was bad.
It was just hilarious. Those were one of the first impressions, lasting impression of June. Anyway, so fast forward to when you were like told me that you were interested in me. We went to Bento's. We were actually eating sushi. I introduced you to sushi, and we were eating there and whatnot. And you told me, and I was like, well, yeah, like I'm kind of feeling you too, you know. And at that moment, it was kind of like mutual, and we both were like, okay. We were exclusive, you know what I mean, during the talking stage, because we were like, you know what I mean, we valued each other and we cared about each other and stuff like that. So we were exclusive to that, and you know the feelings were mutual at that point. And then it kind of just changed from like
overnight, y'all.
From like one day to the other.
You wrote me this long message on WhatsApp.
I know, WhatsApp, right?
And you told me that this is not the time for you to be kind of like seeking a relationship, and
the whole thing of like, I just got to focus on yourself
on God
and your relationship with God. I know. And for those of you guys that do say that, people can read between the lines. Like, they know that it may not be
that's like the best and worst answer, because in some instances it can be very true, like you're working on yourself, working on your relationship with God, and then like you said, the other side of it is like, I'm just not interested.
Or I'm gonna take it back or whatever. So that ended up happening. The reason why that happened, you were just kind of like, what the heck, but on my side, I had shared some of like my feelings towards you to a couple of my family members in my family, and they had reservations with me pursuing anything with you because solely you were not Hispanic, you were Black. So I was like in my early 20s, you hear the advice of those around you and you're like, wow, then I'm wrong and they're right, you know, because you value them, you respect them, you quote unquote honor them. And therefore I was like, oh, like I shouldn't do this. I guess I'm wrong. And so because of that, I like kind of backed out of us even like continuing to like know each other, because I listened to people's opinion. When then ultimately I found out that obviously that is not right. And I love them and respect them, but, it just wasn't what God was calling me to do. And I knew that. And so, yeah. So how was it when you finally found out why it was that I had backed away? Like, how did you feel?
Yeah, just kind of like rewinding a little bit. There were a couple of dates that we had scheduled and like you didn't show up.
Put me out there like that. I thought we healed.
I know we did heal. It's funny now. It's not funny. It wasn't funny then, but it's funny now.
God.
But there were a couple of times where we were supposed to hang out, but for whatever reason you flaked, and I didn't know at the time why.
Yeah.
And then once I found out why, this was something that wasn't new for me. Because prior to meeting you, I had relationships outside of my race before, and so this was something that I think happened maybe once before, and so and just the stereotypes that come with being Black, a Black man in America and things like that, and so this wasn't anything that was unfamiliar. I think during that time when you told me why you had reservations, I looked at it like this. I was like, if you're gonna give me my place and stand up for me and we're gonna pursue this relationship, then cool. But the moment that stops, then I believe we both can go our separate ways and be good.
Yeah.
And you did that. You gave me my place. You stood up for me against the opinions of those that you love and family members. And I know that wasn't easy from your side, but for me, it just let me know, okay, she's a real one.
That's right.
And it was some hard times, and I had resentment towards some of your family members because of how they viewed me without even getting to know who I was as an individual. One of the things during that time that I was kind of reminded of was that, the Lord will defend you. You don't need to, defend yourself, And I remember someone having a conversation with a family member of yours and saying, if I were to have a son, I would want him to be June. And this person had like no idea what was going on or any of that. And for me, that was just an example like, wow, like, God, you really do got me, And so it was challenging, but the fact that we were in it together and that you stood for me and you stood beside me, I was like, if we can conquer this, then we can conquer whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my perspective. What was it like for you at home or, around family?
Yeah, so it was tough. It was a tough time. I'm not going to say that it was like a celebration of, you know what I mean? Like you're getting into a serious relationship, like, and all of that came with it. I had to do a lot of soul searching and just like asking God honestly for just wisdom, guidance, and humility. Like that is honestly just where I was at that season. I really I liked you, and I was like, man, like this is, I knew the call of God over my life, and I was understanding the call of God over yours, and I was like, I see how God can merge our paths for his glory, and our passions just align. Like our foundations were just like legit and they were set, and I was like, man, like this, you know what I mean? Like you're it for me. Like at that moment, I was like, this might be it. And so I didn't want that to be the driving force, for me just kind of stepping away without giving it an opportunity. Obviously if it didn't work out, then it didn't work out, but I didn't want it to be based on, that or someone's opinion. So I gave you your place, and, for, my family members, that disagreed, I was like, yo, you know what? I love you and I respect you, but like, I'm going to go and I'm going to seek this, cause I'm a praying person, you know what I mean? So the Lord confirms in my heart too, you know? So that's just kind of how it was. It was a tough season. There was a lot of things that we had to do alone, that it was just kind of like, it was just us and, friends and those that did support us. Cause it's not like the entire world was against us. No, but those that did support us and root us on and speak life into us and became mentors and friends during that season. Like, you really got to see that. And so I wouldn't change it now, you know what I mean? But at that moment, it's kind of like, man, like this is not what I expected. But at that time, my eyes became open to something that I had never experienced to that extent firsthand, when it came to prejudice and when it came to reservations of individuals outside of your race. And so growing up as a Hispanic, you hear like, oh, you have to tienes que mejorar la raza, like you have to better your race, or you have to, you know what I mean, like do things that are going to, kind of improve your current situation, you know what I mean? Like you hear things like, white is right, and these comments are wrong, and ultimately you come to find out that they're ignorant, but at that moment they were just engraved into your mind to where that's all you knew, and you thought that that was right. And these are things that are taught and they're wired into the mind of you. And as a kid, sometimes you don't even know that this is wrong, because this is what you're hearing from those around you. And when I finally checked that, I was like, oh no, like this is a racism issue. This is a prejudice issue. And this is not God's will. Like that's sin, and it has to be called out for what it is. And I choose to stand against that. And God, and like in my prayer time, I was like, if this is the journey that you're calling me to walk through, just give me the grace to walk through that.
That's so good.
If this is the valley that you need me to feel and endure and feel the pain and the hurt of being pushed aside and marginalized, and whatever it is because of something that I cannot control, or whatever it is, like help me to walk in that and let me feel, your heart in this, so that way I can be a vessel of life to other people that may be journeying through this at some point or another. Until this day, we have people that are in multiracial relationships that come up to us and ask us, like, how did you do it? Like, because I'm facing this opposition at home, or my parents don't agree with that, or my grandparents are talking about this, and like we're able to share our story and just again be a beacon of hope, that one time I would have never seen this happen, but it is our story.
Absolutely. And just kind of fast forwarding to like when we even got engaged, to kind of touch on where like you said, the support of friends, the support of,
mentors and other people,
mentors and things like that was a great deal for us, and it helped us because it was like, now we're about to take this next step. And you would think by then, because what was that time frame like?
So we started officially dating March 31st of 2015. We met in 2013. We were like friends for like a good 2 years. Interested in each other. We talked for a while, and it's because I really wanted
for
you
a
to.
while, y'all.
We talked for a while.
She would always say, there are levels to this, and I'm gonna give you some context on that. So I would try to hold her hand. Nope. Try to give her a kiss. Nope. Like, it was literally levels to this. And I used to always hate when she said that.
Even do like the hand signal, like putting my hand up like if we're going towards levels, like there are levels to this. I did it before Steve and I ever did. Anyways, but side conversation. But yeah, so that was just part of like because the reason why is just because I wanted to have like clear boundaries of where we were going in our relationship, because at that point in my life, I wasn't playing. Like, you were either fully in or you were not. And again, I respect everyone's like opinion on that. But at that moment, I knew the healing journey that I had already walked through. And I was like, I'm not going to allow myself to like be opened up to hurt again with someone who is not sure of where they want to go in life. You either like know or you don't know, and I'm here to like help you through the journey if you're willing to. But you know what I mean? I wasn't with that whole back and forth, like, you don't know what you want type thing. Like, I was just like, I was set, I was ready, and I knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I wanted you.
Yeah. And so that engagement, that process was challenging within itself as well, because, we got the support from mentors and friends, but everyone on family still wasn't on board. And it was like
some,
some. And it was just one of those things like, we were really about to make this official,
right?
And I remember just kind of having some tough conversations, and I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna, like, how are we gonna do this, like,
right.
And what was that like for you personally? Because my mom embraced you from day one.
Yeah.
I remember when you first came home, and I introduced you as my girlfriend, and she was like, no break up.
She literally held my hands like at the living room table, and she like, looking into my eyes, and she's like, no breakups, okay? And I was like, all right,
my mama
I get
knew.
the expectation.
Aileen knew.
No pressure. But your family embraced me from day one. It was a tough season, like I said. It was just a lot of times where just like a lot of your first moments that you don't have the full support of everyone that you would have wanted. But again, it's like I feel like I just got this like supernatural strength to just like do it, if that makes any sense. Like, were there tears? Absolutely. Was there a lot of lonely nights? Yes, there were. Were there times where it was just like, Lord, it's me and you, or it's just Jun and I, and our support team and our cheerleaders? Yes, there was, but I didn't have the support from everyone. You know what I mean? And it really didn't start changing until after we got married. That literally today, it's like a complete 180, and it's like that season never happened. Like, you know what I mean? Or how everyone kind of just like flows with one another, and like, energy and vibes, and like, the relationship that we've been able to build. It's like if there was never that point of,
right,
reservations or her, or, whatever it was. So I'm thankful for that. And it's honestly something that we prayed for that now we see into fruition. Yeah. So that was a tough part. And, so now, moving into December 2016, we decide to get married on that day. And it was a beautiful day.
Great time.
Oh my gosh.
Friends, family, great food that we didn't really get to eat. I'm still mad about that.
That happens to married
I
couple.
told the server, listen, save me some food. Like, it was, man, the appetizer, it was banging. I mean, it was so good.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got you. Yeah, I got you.
Get you.
And then you know how it is on wedding day, because I always was like, no, I'm going to eat on my wedding day. No one's going to stop that. I'm not trying to be hangry on my wedding day. And so it's like, we ate a little bit, then they pulled us for pictures.
Yeah.
for dancing. And then like toward the end of the night, it's like, I don't have a piece of cake. I don't have my food. I'm mad. I started going to people's tables, y'all. I'm not kidding.
No,
and I literally started taking the cake.
Oh my gosh.
Because I love Puerto Rican cake, the best cake out there.
And that's the cake we had on our wedding.
And that's the cake that we had at our wedding. So I was like, you, give me a cake. But this is the only one. I'm the groom. Give me the cake.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, he used that card.
And so we had a blast, man. Yeah. It was so awesome. It was
super stress free. There was nothing that happened that day that was like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that entire year, because we got engaged
in December 20th of 2015.
So we had a whole year of planning for our wedding. That year was tough. You know?
That year was tough.
And so that way, like that end of that celebration, it's like there is literally no bumps in the road. Like it was smooth. Mm-hmm. We were like in it. We were so happy. Like neither of us like were upset. There was no drama with my bridesmaids or with your groomsmen.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? Like it was honestly just like a beautiful celebration, a beautiful time.
Definitely like the best day of my life, like for real.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I was just like, I wasn't nervous. As crazy as that sounds.
Me neither. Like, I had this like peace that day.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like, you good, June? Yeah, I'm good. Mm-hmm. I'm good. And so let's fast forward into a month and a half into our wedding.
Yes. Into our marriage.
Into our marriage. And things kind of took a turn.
Yeah. So January 28th of 2017, I remember the day like it was yesterday. That day rocked probably the trajectory of where I thought our marriage was going to go. That day you were working. Mm-hmm. I was at home.
It was a Saturday night. I will never forget.
It was a Saturday night, and I was at home. Used to work the night shifts on Saturday nights, so for some reason I felt like literally it was like my spirit just like, you need to go look at this, and you're gonna find something. And it was just so random because to this point, like, we were, about a month married. We were good. Like, you know what I mean? We trusted each other, through our relationships, through our dating season and courting season, like, we had built a good foundation. We went to premarital counseling with like 3 different couples and individuals. Yes. We went to someone who wasn't in church. We went to our mentors and pastors, and then we also met with another pastor. And then one of the couples that helped us kind of plan our wedding, like they became like our mentors and like our spiritual like father and mother. So during this time, like we literally felt like we were emotionally and spiritually ready to get married. Mm-hmm. Like, because we did our due diligence. And the reason why we went to so many people is because I wanted to make sure that we were setting ourselves up for, success. Because you can't just plan for a wedding that is just a day. You need to plan for your marriage.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
We were doing all of this, going to counseling. And even before that, we had been doing already like individual counseling to, again, address some of those issues that I knew that I had and that you were aware that you had. So we're like, okay, we're aware, we understand, whatever. So come to this day, our marriage just kind of falls apart in the day. Our trust was shattered, everything that we had built up from when we, started courting and dating, honestly, would just like evaporated in a day. And as you guys know, like trust is so easy, it's hard to build, but it is so easy to just like fall and just, disappear. So I call you, telling you that what is this? Can you explain this? Whatever. I guess you already knew like what I was talking about. I was like, all right, well, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done, because for me, I went into marriage, and I know this now, I went into marriage and it was not unconditional. It was very conditional. I did not unconditionally love you. I loved you conditionally. I loved you, despite of everything. But if this happens, we're done. Like I was very And till this day, I can be a little bit cutthroat on some things, but I was very cutthroat on like one of those deal breakers in my life. And so that ended up happening. And you show up at the house, like probably like an hour later after I had called you, and all hell broke loose. It was not a pretty fight, guys. It was the ugly fight. There was yelling. There was slamming doors. There was words that were exchanged. And again, transparency, this is what we're about. I was broken, shattered, and I left you.
Yeah, so then at that time you left. And so a month into our marriage, we're separated.
Yeah.
We're separated. You're not answering my phone calls, my text messages, anything. And so for me, I'm like, what the heck, man? Like, this is really going to be over, you know? Like, we can work through this, you know? And, you know, I always had the optimism, you know, like, okay, we can get through anything, you know?
Right.
But I was like, man, this may not work, you know?
That's right.
There was always a little bit of hope, but then it was like, I don't know. And through that season, you know, we had pastors and mentors helping us. And even though I was not able to communicate with you for the amount of time that you were, you know, you went back to live with your parents, I would kind of like have a little glimpse of hope, you know, speaking to my pastors, because we were getting mentored by the same people.
Right.
Even though we weren't having that communication with one another. And I just really just said, you know what? I'm going to fight for my marriage. I'm not going to lose this marriage, you know, because I believe that God can redeem this. And I remember just starting a worship playlist, and I went into prayer and fasting. And from my perspective, I was like, even though she's not responding to anything, I'm still going to send her messages, letting her know, hey, I love you. I'm praying for you.
You would drop gifts off on my car.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, in the parking lot?
Yep. Because I knew you didn't want to see me.
You knew where I worked. We worked really close to each other. So he would go and drop off letters and, like, leave them in, like, a window, you know what I mean, of the car,
right,
on the wiper, you know, the wipers or whatever. And I used to be like, what the heck? Because I was literally, guys, like, we did not talk probably for
good 2 weeks.
Good 2-3 weeks that we had no communication with each other after that time. And I wanted nothing to do with June because I was so hurt. Like, what happened, I was like, yo, there's no way that we can come back from this. And I remember, you know, one of our mentors and pastors, she was like, you know what? Like, she just texted me. She was like, I know what happened. She's like, if you need your space, have all the space that you need, but know that I'm here. You know? And that's all she said. And at that point, that's exactly what I needed, because I didn't need someone to come and tell me, like, you know what I mean? Like, you need your marriage, like, you need to go back to your husband, whatever. No, I was hurt, and she validated how I was feeling. And then when I finally met with them after, like, a couple weeks, I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I'm not made. I told her, I was like, I'm not made to face this. I was like, I'm not made to go through this valley. Like, I was like, you know, he made the mistake. I didn't make the mistake, you know? You know, he was the one that chose that. I didn't. But yeah, I'm suffering the consequences. I was like, I don't get that. And she was like, you're in your right to step away. She's like, you don't have to, but you're going to have to choose to face this and him if you want to be together at some point. She never pushed me to go back. She didn't push me to, like, talk to you. She's like, you deal with your emotions, and you know what I mean? And allow yourself to grieve, because you're grieving so much. You're grieving everything that you thought you had, everything that you thought was, and even the future, because it's so unknown that you can't even, like, put things together to see how it even's going to work out. Like, you don't know nothing. And that's the moment that I found out that I have no control over you. I do not control you. You know what I mean? Like, you choose, you know what I mean, what you want and ultimately the outcome of every decision will ultimately affect us. And so she tells me, she's like, the only thing I'm going to ask is that right now, don't make any decisions. Make 0 decisions. You want to stay at your parents, stay at your parents. But while you are hurting and while your emotions are high, don't make any decision. I didn't really listen to her.
No, you didn't.
I went to a lawyer. I had a consultation with the lawyer. I had, paperwork. I had already the whole plan, because again, I was immediately like walls up, guarding Stephanie. Like, you don't care for my heart. I need to care for my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I need to guard my heart, all this kind of stuff. And probably 2 months later, in March, was when I was like...
Well, let's rewind a little bit before we go to March.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't speak 2 weeks, and then you came to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time that we had communicated at all.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I opened the door and you were there, I was like, okay, there's hope. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was February 11th.
Mm-hmm.
February 11th, 2017. And like 3 days before Valentine's, I was like, okay, there's hope. And we kind of talked a little bit. You didn't come inside. We talked, we cried, we hugged and things like that. And so I left with hope, and I
was not there.
yeah, we were on two different.
Every little conversation, you thought it was like, hope. And I'm just like, bro,
right,
being cordial.
Right. Okay, go back to March.
So we began to like talk a little bit here and there. We're not hanging out like that. We're not living together at that moment yet. It was like probably the end of March, beginning of April, that I decided, okay, you know what? Like, let me just try this out. Let's, because he had shown like a lot of different things that he, wanted to do, and he was okay with doing. I had come up with a contract of to-dos to kind of, which I thought at that time was kind of like, it was going to help me be in a better place mentally and emotionally. Because if you do these things, then it's showing me that, you're serious about this restoration that we're going to have to go through. The idea wasn't bad, but ultimately it's in your heart to want to do these things, right, and ultimately be in a place of restoring our marriage. So,
and from my perspective, when I saw that, and then, the conversation, it was with our mentors, was, you sign this. If you don't sign this, then you can sign these papers.
Yeah, and I had
for
the
divorce, and you had the divorce papers. So for me, I was like, I didn't really have an option. So for me, my perspective was, I feel like I'm kind of like, obviously I have a choice,
right?
But at that time, the feeling that I had is either this or this, and that's really what it was. And I was like, well, I'm gonna do whatever to be with you. And so, not really thinking, not really, looking at this, because I was like, whatever, I'm willing to sacrifice whatever to be with you, But when I looked at this list, and I'm just like, man, like, honestly, I was like, this is ridiculous. I was upset. I had like resentment toward it, and I was like, I feel like I'm like being controlled. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how I felt. And I'm like, I made a mistake, but like realistically, this list, I can't, and I remember that causing friction amongst us and constant fighting, because for me at that time, I'm like, okay, if we're going to make this step to try and make this work, then I understanding setting boundaries and parameters and things like that. But at the same time, leaving the past in the past, and let's work towards moving forward. So I had the mindset that, hey, let's just fix this. And as men, we have a tendency to be fixers. It's in our nature. It's in our DNA. Like, if something is wrong, we fix it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not Bob the Builder. I don't, I can't build everything, but like I can fix a couple of things,
Yeah.
But what I had to learn and what I had to understand, because what happened is in April, we went to
A marriage intensive.
an intensive marriage counseling session
Right.
with other couples.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get a scholarship to kind of pay for it.
The
And
intensive. Yeah.
yeah, and so we're in Branson, Missouri, in the middle of nowhere. And with all these other couples, we're the youngest couple there.
People are literally telling us, like, what? You have issues like 3 months into your marriage.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
Get ready.
It was funny. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I wanted to fix this. You get what I'm saying? And I remember one of the first things that the counselor said there, that instead of taking a posture of critique, take one of curiosity.
That's where that came from. Yeah.
That's where that came from. That's one of the biggest things that stuck with me till this day. And he says to take a posture of curiosity and not one of critique. And I wanted to fix this, but I had to understand that this is not a flat tire.
Yeah.
This is not something that was hung on the wall and fell out. No, this is emotions. This is going to take time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy. And I remember one of the first questions that he asked, he says, what do I want to gain from this week? And I'm looking at my notes now. And I remember answering that question. And I said, what I want from this week is reconciliation. I want forgiveness. I want healthy marriage. And I want us to trust one another. I was like, I also don't want the past to be brought up every time there's anger or a disagreement. I want patience and understanding of one another. I want to communicate effective with one another and not an eye for an eye mentality.
I actually have my answer too.
Oh, hey, go ahead, read, girl.
It says, what do I want to see happen? I want to be free from resentment and hurt. I want to be able to restore the hope to love again. And I want to forgive at my own pace. Yeah. So we're in this marriage intensive and we learn not only just like how to communicate, but I feel like I learned an important value that till this day I hold dear. And that is my marriage and my relationships will not be as whole and healed as I am whole and healed individually. And I not only saw, I knew your brokenness, but I did not see my brokenness too. Before you, I already had trust issues. So you were not the cause of the issue. It was just amplified because I was already dealing with that. I learned that I was responsible to fix how I felt, even though you caused it, but it was my responsibility to fix. And for that entire time, I wanted you to fix how I felt. And that's why I had the 1,000 list of things that you needed to do, because I thought that was going to help me feel better. But that was wrong. I learned that during conversations, experiences, whatever, we never fill those unknowns with positives.
Say that again.
So your mind is constantly thinking of the worst case scenario, but it's just your mind. I learned that I was amping up my emotions. You know what I mean? That I was constantly like negatively thinking about what you did, what you were doing, what you caused, what you didn't do, all these different things. And it brought me to a point past bitterness. I resented you for what you had done and what I thought you had, kind of like the lies that I thought that I had believed, about you. What were some things that you learned during that intensive?
Well, one of the things that I learned was that the mind and the heart are in two different time zones.
Yeah.
One of the things that he brought up was the mind being logic and reasoning and the heart being the emotions. Now, you hear these things in church, and it's like, yeah, I know that. But he brought up such a great example. He's like, it's kind of like when you go to the movie theaters and you're watching a movie, something sad happens in that movie. In your mind, you know that this is a fiction movie.
Yeah.
But your heart does not. And that's why there's emotions there.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, in my mind, in her mind, I'm like, the logic and reasoning is this happened
in January.
In the past, like let's move toward reconciliation. Mm-hmm. But yet, what I realized was that your heart didn't have a time frame or zone, and so you were still on day one.
Yeah. So my heart was still at January 28th.
Right.
Even though we were in April.
Yes.
So what that tells us is that even though our body has an automated healing system, our heart does not have one.
Yeah. The heart doesn't know time like the mind, nor is it bound to time like the mind.
That's right.
And so something else that they said is that, unresolved issues, kind of what you spoke on, how you had trust issues. Unresolved issues are like a jack in the box that the world is cranking the handle to. And sometimes we suppress these things,
That's right.
these traumas that take place in our lives earlier. And when we don't deal with them, the world is just cranking the handle to them. And then one moment, it just needs something for it to just erupt and boom, like a jack in the box or like a volcano. And there's just an eruption because of all those things that were suppressed. And so we sometimes do a great job of compartmentalizing, and there's times and spaces for that. Yeah. But when it comes to traumatic issues and things that we need to deal with in crisis, we need to address that because it follows us. It follows us into adulthood. I remember a pastor always said that adult issues are youth issues unresolved.
That's right.
And that's what we were dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it really just brought this like level of just knowledge and refreshing, to hear someone else's wisdom in your current crisis and then see how you can apply that, honestly just kind of changes your current perspective. So we're in this intensive. We were there for an entire week of like intense counseling. I'm talking about like eight hours a day of counseling. But again, I wouldn't take it back. Like that's what we needed in that moment. If we were going to even, continue this marriage, which at that point leaving, I felt like I had tools and resources, but I wasn't 100%.
Yeah, because my perspective was,
we just went to
we're good. And one of the things about being around other couples, like, I was like, man, like, do I really want to share all my information with all these people?
Yeah.
But it was more expensive to do just the individual couples. And then I thought to myself, well, they're here because their marriages have issues. Yeah. I'm not going to see these people again. And so I was like, whatever, Yeah. But it was so comforting and strengthening to see other couples going through issues as well, trying to strive and work at it. And one of the things that was uplifting for me is that, like I said, we were the youngest couple there, and they told us, listen, what you're doing right now is great because you're not waiting years down the line to be doing this. These people I remember one guy saying, man, I got shoes older than y'all. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
And like they had children our age and they even had grandchildren. And it was just like, wow. And so I'm in the mindset of, wow, well, at least we're, addressing this now.
Yeah.
And before we move along, another thing that I had learned is that, can June be okay if Steph is not okay? Can June be okay if things between Steph and June are okay? Can June be okay if June is not okay? Because
can you explain that a little bit more?
Absolutely, because for me, my whole life, because of my childhood and the relationship that my parents had, it wasn't the greatest relationship. A lot of arguing, a lot of yelling. I would at all costs try to avoid arguing or conflict. It's not that I ran away from it, you know, but I would at all costs try to be at peace. Because for me, yelling and arguing and fighting is something that I saw all the time. And so I hated it.
Yeah.
And so I made it my priority. I don't want this when I get married, you know? And I was a natural born chaser. So if something was wrong, I'm chasing to fix it and to get it done. Like, so when you would be upset with something, I'd be like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And I would like smother you and not give you that space. And what I learned during my time in Missouri is that, hey, if she needs the space that she needs to kind of process her thoughts, because you and I process different.
That's right.
I kind of process. I'm like I don't even know what to describe.
Yeah, you're like a vocal processor. So like as you're talking, like sometimes you're like, oh, okay, you come to an understanding, but you need to talk in order to process, because you also need where I am at mentally to come to like an end conclusion.
Right.
For me, I need to process how I'm even feeling about the situation before I even talk to you, because half of the time I don't even know how I feel about it. So first I have to like come in tune with like myself to then even tell you, hey, this is where I'm at. And that came from me growing up and my voice and my opinions not being validated, and therefore I did not develop an emotional vocabulary to even tell you, hey, I'm mad. What you did was mad. What you did made me mad. And so I couldn't even tell June, this is how bad it was, guys. Like I couldn't even tell June, like, what you did hurt me. I couldn't even tell him that. What I did, I would completely withdraw. I would stonewall him. I wouldn't talk to him for a day, 2 days, 3 days, trying to like, just again, you did something wrong. Now you have to fix me. And again, I didn't know, you know, I was clueless. And so, you know, I'm in this moment of like, okay, I am finally learning to process how I feel. Am I angry? Am I upset? Am I disappointed? Am I feeling hopeless? Am I, you know, desperate for something? Am I angry? Am I hurt? Whatever it is, like I finally developed an emotional vocabulary to then begin to tell him how I was feeling about the situation.
Yeah.
And that was me at 25.
Yeah.
24, 25.
And something else that I remember them saying is that as men, we have to move from fixer to researcher. And I had to study you.
Yeah.
Because women, y'all do a great job of studying us.
Yeah.
Y'all
I know you like
yeah, it's crazy. Like
we study you guys from the moment we meet you. And even before that, we know more about you than you think we know. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And so I had to learn how to do that. Because I'm wired, again, to fix.
Right.
That comes natural. But I had to move from fixer to researcher. And it was hard for me to kind of process you not being okay and me being the cause of it. So learning to be okay even if you're not okay and not chasing you was tough. But I remember one of the things that they said to you is that for someone who is a chaser is that give me a time of when we can communicate on that.
Yes.
Because people sometimes put up a wall or I don't want to talk about it right now. But that's not healthy for someone.
It's not fair to you.
Yeah, it's not fair.
That you need that to be able to process the outcome and how you're feeling. And so what I had to teach myself was, Steph, you can only be mad for 2 hours. And that came with discipline, because for the love of God, I know that was not like that at the beginning. I'd be mad until whenever I felt like being different. So I had to time myself and be like, I'm going to be mad. I don't want to talk about this right now, but at 7:00, I'll call you to talk about it.
And for me, that was so helpful because I'm like, okay, we're going to talk about it.
Right.
2 hours from now, we're going to talk about it.
That's right.
Instead of kind of being left in the
in
dark.
the air. Like, I don't even know where's it going to fall today. You know what I mean? Like, what's the temperature? Like, I don't even know. So I had to train myself to manage my emotions because I did not know how to do that before. Was that easy? No, but it came with discipline, and therefore I began to see, you know what, sometimes I need to take it a minute at a time. I need to take this, like my emotions when I'm processing a minute at a time, because the day's too long. 1 minute you may be happy, you're good. The next minute you're crying. The next minute you're angry. The next minute you have a little bit of hope. The next minute you're just like, oh my goodness, the world is over. Like, you know, and that's exactly how I had to process how I was feeling. It honestly was a day-to-day journey.
Mm-hmm.
It was a day-to-day journey. And that's, you know, that's what kind of started our healing process of beginning to talk about what happened. And you get even a better idea of how it made me feel. Because until this moment, you're like, it happened in the past, just get over it. But you did not know that I was carrying this amount of hurt during this time. And I had still been at day one, even 3, 4, 5 months in.
Yeah. And for those listening, like, it can kind of come off like I was very insensitive, but that wasn't it.
No,
it was just when
right,
things
right.
would, because I felt like I obviously didn't feel how you felt, but like I felt the weight of the shame and the guilt, you know, and so two different things, because guilt on one hand is like, man,
I could have done something better.
I could have done something better. I could have made a better decision. I'm not that. But shame is, you know what? I am that.
I'm a bad person.
I'm a bad person. And that's where I was at with it, you know? And trying to fight that off was very difficult and very challenging. And so for me, I was like, whenever we would go through issues and, you know, arguments would come and it would kind of like, you bring up the past and things like that. Like for me, it was just kind of like a slap in the face. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, are we ever going to be able to overcome this? Like it got to a point where even I, you know, and I know I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but even I was like, man, you know what? Because it was one time we went to counseling.
Yeah, that was about maybe 8-10 months after it had happened.
Right. After
Almost
being
a
in Missouri
year.
and after the intensive care. And I left out of my individual counseling feeling great. And then you had your counseling session. And then I remember the counselor calling me back like, hey, I need to get you in here. And she's like, you guys are on two different.
Yeah. You're like on polar opposites
Yeah.
on where your relationship is heading.
Right.
And you need to be aware of this.
Yes. And I was so angry at that moment.
Yeah.
I was so angry because I was like, here I am trying. Here I am, you know, making an effort. I'm following this list, you know. And then I realized the conversation, I'm sorry to keep going back to Missouri, but it's like, you can do all these things and she still isn't going to trust you.
And you know why?
Because God is perfect.
And yet we do not.
And we don't
him.
trust him at all times. What
That's
makes you
right.
think she's going to trust you, a flawed individual?
That's right.
And that night, it was the first time I realized I'm not in control over this relationship. And it was for the first time that I realized and that I felt what you felt.
The uncertainty of the relationship.
The uncertainty of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I was just like, God, I don't know what to do. And I was hurt.
Yeah.
I was angry.
Emotions were very high that day.
And I was just like, God, whatever, man. You take control of this.
Yeah.
Because I can't do anything. I've done everything that I can do.
That's right. And at that moment, it was one of those other like pivotal moments where I was like, you can either choose. She's like, you have an option. You can choose to stay or you can choose to go. It's one or the other. God cares about your soul. God cares about your soul more than he cares about your marriage.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to hear that when she was saying that.
God cares more about your well-being, emotionally healthy, you know, and spiritually, mentally, more than you just being in a relationship just to say that you're married.
Yeah.
And, like she had the realest conversation with me.
She did. And the reason why I say that joke, but in seriousness, like it felt, and I know what she was saying and I know what she was doing, because it was like, you're either in it or not.
That's right.
And that's what she was trying to tell you, because if you're going to be in it, then let's work towards it. But if not, if this was going to be, then God cares more about you.
That's
and
right.
so, and all her brilliance and, you know, her, and how she was doing it. But for me, I felt like, yo, she's not fighting for this. Like, we're really about to be done, you know? But later on, I kind of understood the approach that she took. And so for me, I was just like, man, you know what? God, this is really in your hands.
Yeah.
This is really in your hands. And something that I remember them asking us during our time in the intensive counseling was, who are you on a good day?
Yeah.
Do you remember when they asked that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember, and I'm looking at the notes now. On a good day, I'm fun, I'm funny, I'm charismatic, I'm happy, I'm helpful, I'm confident, hopeful, secure, conqueror, thankful, grateful, and strong.
For me,
yeah, go ahead.
On my best days, I am playful, outgoing, clear thinking, expressive, selfless, positive or optimistic. I give my heart a voice, and I am trusting.
The next question was, things in life would go better for me if I think before I speak, be more patient, put more of my plans, goals, dreams, and ideas in action, aka be assertive. What was that like for you?
What that brought me back to was, regardless of how I'm feeling today, this is who I can be every single day. So even if my current circumstances may not look ideal and I'm not, where I would want to be, or we are not where we would want to be, like, I can choose to be this person to you and for myself. And therefore, that day I was like, you know what? I haven't been trusting God in my healing process like I should have. And so therefore, I don't want this. And so I started writing, Stephanie, what is it that you do want in this relationship, in this marriage? And therefore begin to put steps in place to ultimately get there. Is it going to happen in a day? No. But there's things that I can choose to do. I can choose for this not to be a thorn in my side. I can choose to trust you, because trust is a choice too. It's not just something that you show the other person. I still choose to trust you. So when I understood that I had a choice to say yes to you every single day, okay then, little by little, okay, I'm gonna give this to God. I'm gonna stop holding it over your head, because you were showing me also integrity. You were showing me that, you wanted to work on yourself and deal with the skeletons that you had in your closet that I didn't know of and that you had never addressed before.
Right. That I had suppressed. Yeah. And, once we started doing that, because for me, I remember the counselor saying that whether you guys work out or not, you still have to address this for yourself.
Yes.
From whomever else you may be with.
Yeah.
In the event that this doesn't work.
That's right.
And then I was like, I got to do this for me. I got to do this for June. Not for Stephanie, but I got to do it for God and myself.
That's right.
And work on myself, that even if this doesn't work, it's going to help me. And when I really took that posture and I really took that, I felt like, God really started doing his work in me. And I was like, you know what, God, I'm not Stephanie's savior.
That's right.
I can't save her. Because we tend to, as guys, as being fixers, to have this Messiah complex. But I was like, I can't save her. She's yours. She's your daughter. And you can love her. You're going to love her more than I can ever love her.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that and started working on me, I was like, you know what? She's upset. She's moody. Okay. But I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be who you call me to be. I'm going to be my funny self, my cheering self. And I'm going to do what I need to do, you know, because one thing that I wrote down is, what is something that God would say to me that he wishes I would be? And I wrote down, to care less of what others or myself think of me and more of what God thinks of me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not my mistake. As a righteous person falls 7 times, he or she rises again.
Amen.
You know, and sin is the bait and guilt and shame are the net. But I need to break that net through God strengthening me and giving me power. And once that happened and once I really got that, things begin to change. I began to pray for you and things started getting better.
Yeah. And so now fast forward into, you know, us deciding, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to go into it hell and high water. And it really was me kind of jumping on board because you were already there. And so we did that and we set boundaries for our relationship, you know, maintenance, you know, that we needed to continue to do. You know, we really started dating each other again, getting to know each other again, you know, having a better understanding of each other. We continued, you know what I mean, counseling. We continued to speak about what we were feeling. There was language that we cut out of our conversations and our marriage. We don't throw the D word anymore. The D word's divorce. Like, we don't throw that anymore. We don't tell each other that you're overreacting anymore because your feelings are valid to what you're experiencing. But therefore, I need to fix maybe my reaction to how I'm feeling. And therefore, we're able to address that. We understood each other's triggers. And therefore, I am more aware of what I could do to hurt you, and it may be unintentional now rather than intentional. You know, I had to change my perspective that you weren't trying to hurt me intentionally, and give you the grace that I so wanted in my own life. You know, and that I, you know, why I had loved you, you know, from the beginning, and understanding that I was wrong and coming into this marriage conditionally, you know? So when I had that realization and we made those changes in our lives and our vocabulary and what, you know, our day-to-day would look like, now you're the best thing, second best thing that ever happened to me. You know, I wouldn't change the pain that we went through. You know, because, and I'm sorry I get emotional, but it was a really dark season. But you saw what forgiveness and reconciliation can do. And if those two meet, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible.
That's right.
And I'm glad we went through that in the first month of marriage. You know, I wouldn't change that for the world because I value you and I love you so much more knowing where you came from and what you had to do to become the man that you are today.
Wow. I love you and I'm so thankful to God for you. I'm so thankful that you and I were able to work this, and now in our marriage going into 4 years now in December, where we are now and where we were then is a complete 180.
Two completely different people.
Our emotional vocabulary is so much stronger now, you know, and like you said, I'm thankful that we went through that. And the time, but you know, looking back on it now, I'm like, it strengthened us. And now we know we're sharing our story, you know, like we're sharing our story. And I know that someone is going to be touched and blessed by this, not because of us, but because of the wonderful work that God did through us. And if he can do it with us, he can also do it with you in your marriage that seems like it's on the brink of divorce, to put your trust in him, because that's what we ended up doing. You know, we stopped trying to do what it is that we thought would work, and we put our trust in God, and we saw the miracle that he did. And so I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for you standing beside me, you know, for standing beside me and journeying with me together, and for loving me. And you're the second greatest thing that happened to me as well. you know, and I love you, and you're my best friend. You're my rider, you know.
Same.
And so look at the wonderful things that God is doing, you know, within our ministry and everything that, you know, that is taking place, you know, the dreams and stuff that are now taking place and happening. And so I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
I will say this before we close out, because I think tools for someone who might be listening now, for marriages, whether you're a married couple, a couple that is engaged, or advice for singles, is to make sure that you're working on yourself as an individual and seeking professional counseling. Even if you feel like everything is okay, we all have things that we go through, you know, finding more about yourself through counseling. I'm pro counseling, pro professional counseling. And whenever you go to people for advice, make sure whomever you're going to are people who have healthy relationships themselves and people that are championing the both of you.
Yeah.
Because just because someone is married doesn't mean they have great marital advice.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, you need to be rooted on the foundation of the truth, the word of God, you know? And so find you some people that are championing you both, that are in a healthy relationship within themselves, and get that professional counseling that you need, you know?
When it comes to counseling, it's like we go to a doctor to evaluate our bodies, you know, when we're sick. We go to a mechanic to fix our cars. We go to school to learn and educate. Like, there are heart healers. And who do you go to for your heart? Like, counseling is for that. And I know that the Holy Spirit is also a counselor. So absolutely, like, your relationship with God ties in with your emotional healing, but someone can journey you through the process of that, especially if you grew up in a home where your emotions and your your emotions were never really developed, and therefore you don't know, you know what I mean, the effect of some of the issues that you dealt with, you know, and therefore you have triggers that you don't know how to maneuver through or address. A counselor, a heart healer, is there to guide you through that and therefore help you and give you the resources to do the work yourself.
Absolutely. This was such an amazing discussion, us sharing our story. We pray and we hope that it blessed you.
Yes. And
let's get into some questions from our listeners.
Absolutely. So the first question that we received was from Tiffany. Her question was, I am an extrovert in my marriage, and I struggle sometimes with finding the fine line of voicing my opinion versus letting my husband lead our relationship. How do I know when it's okay to speak up or just let it be for the sake of not answering or not fighting? So first, I think it's important that you and your significant other are both on the same page to know that you are on one team. You know, you are tackling life challenges, you know, and issues together, and therefore you work at it from the same team perspective. So I'm not going to say or do anything intentionally to try to hurt you or therefore bring ultimately conflict or an argument into our relationship. Not every fight has to be maybe how we were taught or how we saw conflict at home, you know, the yelling, the slamming doors and things of that nature. So we can have an argument and actually it be healthy. And that's something Jun and I had to learn, and also unlearn behaviors that we both saw, you know, in our homes growing up. So one of the things that we like to do is a concept called fair fighting. So some of those things are, you know, first, before I ever bring something up to Jun, I have to do some soul searching and ask myself, what is the one thing that's really bothering me? And yes, I said one thing. Do not come with a list of like 20 things, you know, from like way back when that have not been addressed. Because again, not everything has to be an argument. And sometimes you just have to choose your battles. You know, I can't control everything that Jun does, and neither can Jun control everything that Steph does. So Therefore, what is the one thing that I really want to ensure that we find a conclusion or a resolution to? So whether that is like, hey, can you please pick up your clothes off the floor? Or can you help me with the dishes once a week? Or whatever the case may be for you. Therefore, I'm addressing that one thing, and therefore we're coming to a resolution. Aside from that, our goal whenever we're bringing something up is ultimately to ensure that our spouses or significant others still feel like they're winning. If I win the argument but lose my husband, I lost, and so therefore I'm not going to bring up a point and then like destroy him, and everything just to like make a point, because again, we're on the same team. So if he loses, I'm losing. And so if he feels like he lost in some way, shape, or form, then I need to feel that same thing too. The third thing is that, again, I need to come to a point. So what are some outcomes that I'm willing to, embrace out of this conflict? Sometimes also within that is identifying a good time to bring this up. Maybe as soon as he comes home and he's had a stressful day is not the best time to bring up this, If he's in his quiet time, devotional time, whatever, it's not the best time. So sometimes ask like, hey, I want to have, a fair fight. I want to have a heart talk or whatever you want to call it. When would be a good time to talk about it? And they could say now, they could say later. They can actually give you a specific time, and therefore you talk about that at that time that is appropriate for the both of you guys. Be very clear with, what is bothering you, and use statements like I feel, I think, and don't make those generalizations, because sometimes, and honestly most of the times, and I found that with myself, when I'm bringing things up, it's because it's happened like a couple of times, but it's not like it always happens. And so give them the benefit of the doubt, use how I feel, what I see, what I think. And don't make generalizations like you always do this, you make me angry, I feel angry when you do this. No, talk about, yourself first, and then hear their point of view.
Something that you said that kind of stood out to me as well is when we say things such as you made me feel. No one can make you feel anything, you are in control over your emotions.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying you made me feel, instead, it should be, I felt this way because of something. Right. I think it's important also when you come to me with an issue that I'm listening to listen, not listening to respond. And so part of that means I need to reiterate what it is that you're saying. So if you come to me and you're like, hey, I hate when you leave clothes on the floor, I need to reiterate that to you. So what you're telling me is, you hate when I leave clothes on the floor. I really
dislike.
The Lord is delivering us right now, y'all. And so it's important to reiterate what is being said, right, so that the listener is actually clear on what the issue is, and both parties are not leaving.
Yeah, with two completely different ideas of what the issue is.
Absolutely. To add a couple of more things when it comes to these conversations is, I think it's also important that each party, provides specific solutions, and that, you're coming to me with the issue. So not only are you coming up with solutions, but you're also inviting me to come up with some solutions on this.
Because you're both, it's like, again, you're on the same team. So it's what is going to work best for you both,
right.
Is me putting a hamper in every single corner of the house really feasible? No, it's not. So, you know what I mean? Like coming down to a solution to where you feel like you're included in the problem solving.
And that's good. And that just goes into the next one, the next point, where it's like discussing the advantages and disadvantages of each proposal.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing is be willing to compromise.
Absolutely.
Only giving me one option is going to make me feel like this is an ultimatum. But if we come together and we can reach some type of common ground where, we both win, then it's better for both of us. Because again, it's not about winning the argument, but it's about, winning each other.
That's right.
And being adults.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. And I hope that that's helpful for you. So again, thank you for tuning in to this episode. We hope that your life was enriched by these conversations. Please make sure to share, to subscribe, to review, and tune in to our next episode.
Take care. God bless, and much love.